Hello, welcome to the training webinar for this week. I'm Dale Franks, and it's a pleasure to be talking to you once again. And once again, we are continuing down the path that we started last week by talking about creating an application and all of the best practices that are incorporated in that process. There's no reason for any further introductory info. Let's go ahead and get right into it and pick up from where we left off last week. We were working on the form and we had added the two sections for request information and approval information. The request information section is where we are going to put all of the information that will be required for each approver to review our request and determine whether or not to approve it or not. There's nothing much we have to do in this section. I don't really even think that there is much information that we need. I'm not going to go through the whole process of building out a full application. If you want to see that, there is the course on advanced design concepts, or the training webinar series on that, where I actually go through and I build out a whole bunch of sections and subsections and stuff like that. We are not primarily interested in what the request is. We're really talking about how to build a generic application that you can use in terms of best practices and processes for any application that you build. So there's not much that we have to do here. I am going to throw in an input control. In fact, I should probably do two things. First thing I should do, since we're talking about best practices, is I should talk about labels and controls. Every control that you place on a form should, for good accessibility practices, have a label control that is linked to it. You know, a lot of times you watch the webinar and what you'll notice I do is I just type text in to create the label for the field, and then I create the field. I do that in the interest of time just to get through, because our time is often so limited here, but that's not the best practice. So a couple of things to think about here. First, whenever we're inside the section, it is not uncommon for us to use tables for layout. And that's fine, but it does have some implications for accessibility. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to throw on a simple table. We're just going to have it with one row and two columns so that we have a minimal table. And now that we have this minimal table, we should probably look at the table properties. In our table properties, we have added a couple of things here for our accessibility. Unfortunately, I don't have it here in this particular version of the product. I am on 6.1.506 on this machine. So unlike documentation, where I'm on a development build of 6.1.200, we don't see all of the new features, but we have added some new features for tables here, including, I believe, a feature that marks the table as, I forget what the term is. It's either decorative or there's a specific term that marks the table for being a non-tabular data, or maybe it's the reverse. Now I don't remember. However, in the newer version of the product, when 6.1.200 comes out, you will have the option of setting the table to be just a display table so that it does not get treated as tabular data by a screen reader. That's not available to me in this version, but you should know that that will be available in the future, and that will resolve an accessibility concern, which is that when screen readers see a table, their default assumption is that the table is there to display tabular data. We're not doing that. We're actually using the table as a layout. Now, I know it's been, well, over 20 years that we're not supposed to use tables for layout. We're supposed to use div tags. However, even though I could put div tags in here and style them, it would require that I know a little bit of HTML, and I would have to go to the source view and actually edit the HTML source. A, we don't usually want to do that. And B, most people don't understand div tags, especially if they're not web designers, but tables are intuitive and easy to understand. So it's okay to use tables for this kind of layout. And in the next version of Process Director, I mean the next new release of Process Director, because I think we're working on a patch currently, 5.514. But just keep that in mind. We are making accessibility changes to tables, and it'll be much easier to use them as layout, because the dirty little secret of web development is that people still do use tables for layout because they're so easy, and B, there's still a problem with different browsers showing div tags differently. A div tag is a division tag, and it enables you to create a little block on the page, and those blocks can stack like tables. That is, built in. It's actually built into the system here. I know that I have div tags somewhere on my toolbar. At least I thought I did. There we go, right there. There is a div container where you could actually create div tags instead of tables. You would have to know how to style them so that they display as blocks, and you may still have to go into the source to add a class or what have you. Or you can add a class, a CSS class, in the properties tab of your form definition down at the very bottom where you have additional CSS classes. So you can use div tags. I think most people don't. Most people who are not web developers don't really have a firm grasp of what a div tag is and how you would set it up to work as a table. And so while that is available to you in Process Director, most people build the table. And that's fine, especially when you get to 6.1.200 and you can specify whether that table is actually showing tabular data or whether it's just a decorative or layout feature. So we can use the table, and that's fine, but there is one thing we need to remember. I used to do this myself, where I would format a table so that one column would show the labels and one column would show the actual form field. So like my first column would be a label column and my second column would show the form fields, and that was all cool. And you can make an attractive looking form that way. The problem is that it confuses screen readers. So you need to place your label and your control in the same cell of your table cell so that the screen reader knows what it is that you're doing. So we will go to other controls and we will throw in a label control, and I will call this label request, and we will give it the text request info. And then we have to put it in with the associated control ID. So I'm going to make a text box. I'm just going to call it request info. And I'm actually going to fix my spelling up here on request. Request info will be my field name. And since I've already typed in the control ID here, I'm just going to go ahead and copy it so that now when I go in and I hit Shift Enter to just throw in, Shift Enter will throw in a break tag, which will move the cursor to a new line without making a new paragraph out of it. And now I can go in and throw in, I'm just going to throw in an input control, and I'm going to paste the name that I created when I did the label, request info, and I'm just going to throw it in here as my request info field. And since I have two fields in this table, I'm just going to do it again real quick. And I'm going to be doing exactly the same thing. I'm going to throw in a label control, and we'll call this label other, and other info will be my text, and I will call the control other info. And once again, I'll go ahead and copy that name so that I can hit Control Enter again. I'll just add another text field here, which I will name other info. Now, what this enables me to do, well, it enables me to do two things. When I have a label control, and that label control is associated with a regular form control, and there we go. There's my label properties over on the right side. When I open the form, if I have trouble using a mouse, I do need to be able to tab through the form and do data entry by just tabbing, which selects a field. And when that field is selected, I can just begin typing into it. When I'm done, I hit tab again and so forth. The other thing, and what this label control does is when I tab, that label control will automatically move me into the field. Not only if I tab to it, but also if I click the label, it will move me directly into the field, just as if I had clicked the control itself. When the associated control ID is set, that associates a label with a control, that label essentially becomes, at least in HTML terms, part of the control itself. It is an integral portion of the control, or at the very least, it is treated in the browser as if it was an integral portion of the control. So you should just know that that's how labels work, and that you need to have labels for all of your fields. If you are going to place your controls in a table for layout purposes, again, fine, but you do need to ensure that your label and control always go into the same cell. Again, it goes back to screen readers. They get confused if they have a label in one cell and a control in the other cell. It doesn't really know how to find that other control, because in the context of the screen reader, that table cell is its own context, its own part of the document object model that it uses to read how a form is constructed. And so it tends to lose track of what control is supposed to be selected. Placing them in the same cell with the label deconfuses screen readers, and they can work properly. That's really all we have to talk about in terms of making the form and making our request information. Now we need to talk about this approval information section. When we created our form last week, we set it up so that all of the fields are disabled by default on the form once the form has been submitted. So on a new form instance, everything is editable, and then we submit the form, and now nothing is editable. So the reason why we have this approval information section is that this is where we're going to group any information that we need to collect from our approvers as this goes through the approval process. That means that if we're going to collect information, they need to be able to provide information. And so the fields that they need to use and work on need to be disabled. Now, obviously, when the process is done, we don't want them enabled anymore. So we have to take care of that. And secondly, whenever we are creating our form, we don't actually need to see any of this approval information. It's not really relevant. So when a new form instance appears, we certainly want the request information to be available and to be editable. but we don't need to actually see the approval information. The end user who is submitting the request doesn't really have any reason to see that. So what we are going to do is we are going to do two things. The first thing I'm going to do is get rid of that extra space on the bottom of the top section for request information so that we don't have some extra white space that we don't need. The second thing we're going to do is go here to this approval information, and we're going to do two things. First of all, we are going to ensure that it is not seen whenever it's a new form instance. So we are going to have to hide it in that case. The second thing we're going to do is only enable it while the process timeline is running. So we need to set both a visibility and enabling scenario for this section so that it appears and is editable in the way that we want. So starting from the top where it says set read only options, we're going to set field is enabled when, and we're going to create our condition. And the condition we're going to create is we're going to look at the process timeline. And we're going to check the timeline status. And we only want this enabled when the timeline status is active. If the timeline is inactive, it doesn't need to be enabled, because if the timeline is inactive, nobody is supposed to be editing it anyway. I am going to click the otherwise disabled so that it is always disabled unless the timeline status is disabled. And then we're going to go to the set display options, and we're going to do and there's two ways of doing this. And this is one of the things you have to remember about conditions. We have both field is visible when and field is hidden when. I'm a big fan of picking one condition type and sticking with it, because in general, I can set either or on these conditions. For example, I want this hidden whenever we are in a new form instance, but I want it visible whenever we are not in a new form instance. So I could set field is visible when new form instance equals true. Or I could set field is hidden when field is visible when new form instance equals false, and field is hidden when new form instance equals true. Now, while I personally am a fan of, whenever possible, matching conditions, right? So I have field is enabled when up here, and I also have field is visible when, field is required when. I'm a fan of, in general, using the same type of condition. So if I start off with field is enabled, then if I'm going to do a visibility condition, I want to do field is visible when. The thing is, while that's a good general rule, those kind of general rules are often made to be broken. In this case, I only want to hide it whenever a new form instance equals true. All the rest of the time, it should display as normal while the process is active, and of course, once the process is complete. I only want to hide it in one circumstance. So rather than picking field is visible when, which is my initial inclination, I'm going to pick field is hidden when, because that's really what I'm looking for. I want to find the one specific point in time when the field is hidden, and that is only when it's a new form instance. So I'm going to break my rule here, and instead of picking field is visible when, I'm going to pick field is hidden when, and I'm just going to go ahead and create that condition, which is new form instance equals true, or yes in this case. And otherwise, I want this to be visible. While this does break my general rule of matching condition type to condition type, I think it makes sense in this case because of what it is I'm trying to do. I've really got one specific use case for when I want the field to be hidden, and I want it to show all of the other times. So while it's generally a good practice to match field conditions or the type of field condition you select, it certainly isn't mandatory, and there can be good arguments for changing the type. So in this case, I'm just going to hide the field rather than hide it or show it whenever new form instance equals false, because new form instance will always be false except for the one time that the form is opened new and a request is submitted. So that makes more sense for me. Now, at this point, now that we have these conditions, we probably want to ensure that this thing works. So we're going to want to do a little bit of testing. And a really great bit of advice anytime that you are working on a form is to run it and test it so that you can see that your conditions are true. Now, the problem with doing that is well, in this case, I'm ultimately going to have to submit this form. If I just want to check that my approval information section is hidden on a new form instance, I can use Save and Test Form. So if I click Save and Test Form, all of the changes I've made up to now will be saved on the form, and the form will be displayed to me. However, the form is displayed to me in a special format. First of all, if I take my mouse and roll over fields, even these fields, which are disabled, but they're displayed as text, I have a little tooltip that is going to pop up that tells me what field that is. So I've got a little debugging information. So far, this looks good, by the way. Our request info is hidden. Let's go ahead and submit the form so that we can see that once my form is submitted, it is no longer hidden. Well, not so fast, because I did hit on the form Save and Test. So when I hit Submit, it's not actually going to submit the form. It's going to go and show me what all of my fields are and what their values are. It's just going to give me a test results page, and that form is not going to be submitted. Now, that is cool because it does allow me to test my form, at least on the initial creation of the form and any changes that I make to the form fields, and whether, let's say I put value X in a form field, and by doing so, it changes the value in some other field, or it goes out and grabs some external data and fills out an array, whatever it might be. I can test all of that stuff. And then when I hit submit, it will just show me my test results, but it won't actually submit the form. This is helpful in many testing situations, but not, unfortunately, in all of them. Because I need to test two things. Sure, it's good to know that the approval information is at least hidden on new form instance. So it does allow me to test that. What it does not allow me to test is whether this is going to be enabled. And I'm not sure what happened here. Approval information is in fact the text. I'm not sure why I got rid of it. But my problem here with this is that I need to test whether the field is hidden when it is, or whether the field is enabled whenever it is not a new form instance, when my timeline is actually running. I can't do that using the Save and Test Form button. I'm going to actually have to submit the form. So you do need to think that whenever you're building stuff, and by the way, it's good to just sort of stop throwing stuff on the form at various points and just test the thing to be sure that the work you've done so far is working. And if it is, great. Oh, and by the way, it saves the form too. So you don't have to worry about losing work. So it's good for that purpose as well. But we are going to have to create some form instances, and that means we're also going to have to create some timeline instances as well. Now, we didn't do much configuration on our building apps timeline, but we will kick it off. I think, if I remember right, I created a user activity, but I might not have. So we're going to go check that. So we're going to save and close the form, which I think we have to do, just to be sure that my timeline is going to work now that I'm at the point where I can begin testing some functionality. So we're going to go to our building apps timeline, and I did create an activity, and it is a user activity. I didn't configure anything. And so again, this makes testing easy here, because whenever I create a new user activity, the default participant is the timeline initiator, which in my testing scenario is me. And that means that whenever I submit the form, it's automatically going to assign a task to me. So I'm happy with that. That's exactly what I want to have happen. And what it enables me to do is to continually test my form until I've built out the vast majority of my form's functionality. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit save and run form, and this will create a real form instance that is submittable. And once it is built, again, the approval information is gone. So great, that's what we want to see. We're going to submit the form. The first activity is assigned to me, which means that the form is going to simply reload. Okay, it's looking good here. I'm in activity 1. My instructions are the sample instructions up here. So we've been able to test that. My request info and my other info fields, I didn't actually fill them out. I probably should have at least thrown some text in there, but that's fine. They are both disabled, and I have show disabled fields as text enabled on this form. So had I put some text in there, it would just show up as plain text here. Happy with that. My approval information section, which has no content yet, is displayed. So great. I'm happy with that as well. My buttons are here. I haven't configured any results for this activity, so I just have the ugly gray default complete button. And at the bottom of the form, I see my routing slip, which I think we are going to rename the audit trail for some reason, but right now it's still called the routing slip, so we'll continue to call it that in the immediate future. So it's working right. It tells me what my actively running activity is. It says it's activity 1, which is what it says up here at the top. So everything agrees. It looks like I've got a pretty good form. I can go ahead and complete my activity here, which will close the form since that's the only activity, and it will end my process timeline. At some point, once I'm done building my form, and I'm ready to move it into production, then I can go ahead and move it. However, even on my dev server, and this is, by the way, where we should be working, right? We should be working on a dev server. We should not be building things on the production server. We should not be directly editing things on the production server. All of the work that we're doing here should be on a development server. And ultimately, we will export all of this application to our production server all at one time as one application with all of the appropriate objects. And anytime we want to make changes, we're going to come back to our development server, and we're going to make the changes there on that server. And once we've done so, we're going to re-import the entire application and import it into our production server. So on the production server, the fact that I'm doing this testing here is irrelevant, because form instances do not get exported from one server to another in most cases. There is an occasional very edge case where you can elect to have form instances exported. That is in an edge case where you are using form instances to provide some sort of configuration for your system. That's very rare. 99% of you are not going to do it, but it is possible to export form instances by default, but you have to make that happen. By default, that is not how the export works. So we don't have to worry about these instances that we're creating while we're testing, exporting from our dev server to our production server. All the import is going to do is pull in the objects. You should keep in mind that at some point, I am going to have to come in here and look at my form instances. And that's the wrong form. That's my email template. So there aren't going to be any instances. But on this form, as you can see, I've already created 2 instances of this form, and these are all test instances. At some point, I need to come back in and delete these instances. And similarly, on my timeline, I currently have 2 completed timeline instances. Those will also need to be deleted as well. There's no reason to keep them on your system. All they're doing is using space. They're all test forms. We know they're not the final form, so there's no real reason to keep them around. So just keep in mind that at some point when your initial testing that you do during the development process, you're going to need to go back and get rid of those forms. But we are going to be making other instances as we go along because we're going to want to be testing our timeline as well. So we are going to have to wait to delete those items now, and we'll delete them all in one fell swoop whenever we finish the development of our application and we know that it all works. So in the approval information, again, I don't know what approval information you need or don't need. That is highly dependent on the process. So I don't really have any specifics about that. What I do have specifics about is the one control that you need to place on your form to gather comments. If you look down here at the bottom of the form at the routing slip, you see the very last column is called comments, and there's a comment, looks fine, okay, done. Well, these comments are provided by a control that lives on the form, but is not technically a form control. And that control is the signature comments control. And I don't remember where it is. Oh, it's right there in input controls. Signature comments is a weird little beast. But this is how we get, oh, well, I've clearly put that in the wrong spot. So let me put my cursor back where it was supposed to go, and we'll throw in that signature comments control. While this control appears on the form, it is technically not a form control. It is a timeline control. The information that you place in this control as an approver is not stored as part of the form and is not retrievable as a form field value from the form instance itself. It is only retrievable from the timeline instance, and that is where the data is stored and where it lives. This control also has its own weird little self-adjusting visibility. It controls its own visibility. It only displays to the user who is conducting or who has been assigned a task in Process Director. So it really only appears to the user who is completing the task. It also does not appear on a new form instance. When you have multiple activities, so I go to activity 1, and the approver fills out the value of this control and then hits submit. It moves to activity 2. The participant in activity 2 does not see any data in this control. This control clears itself out and operates as a brand new control with a brand new value in every single timeline activity. If you open the form and you are not in the context of performing an activity that you've been assigned. So you have a user task assigned to you. If you don't have a user task assigned to you, you will also not see this control. It largely controls its own visibility. So there's two ways that we can go about this. Now, what I have done for best practices reason is I have added an approval information section. And I've had to set that section's value and stuff. But the reason that I created that approval information section was under the assumption that there are going to be other fields that your approvers need to fill out. That may not be true. And in that case, you don't actually need an approval information section simply to encapsulate a signature comments control. You can let the signature comments control just live at the very bottom here of the form where the approval information section is. You could just throw in a signature comments control there and you'd be fine. It automatically wouldn't display on a new form instance or when the process is over or if you aren't assigned a task. If you are assigned a task, you'll see it. It will be blank so that you can provide the data for that task. The only way I can actually see what any of my approver comments are is by looking at the routing slip. You're going to have to remind me, by the way, when we get to knowledge use, about how we're actually going to pull this data back out, because one of the most common questions is, okay, well, I've pulled my knowledge view and it's returning form instances, and I went to the form fields and it doesn't show my approval or my signature comments control. That is correct. It does not. You are going to have to pull this back with the timeline instance variable or the activity timeline activity variable that actually returns those comments, and you'd have to put that in as a system variable, as a column in your knowledge view. So remind me, just add a question or throw something in chat so that I can see it, because chances are I may forget it by the time we get to knowledge views next week or the week after that. Well, now that we've got our signature comments control, we should probably name it. I'm just going to call it approver comments. And the approver comments has a text property. This is the text that will be displayed as the label for the control. Essentially, this control has a label already built into it. Now, you might ask, why haven't we just gone ahead and built a label into all of the other controls and created a text property? That is an excellent question. For the signature comments control, you may have noticed I did not answer that question. For the signature comments control, though, we do have that text property. So we can throw in the add any comments you'd like to add. And now I'm going to put something here in the text. I'm going to put disapproval requires a comment. There we go. Add any comments you would like to add. I don't think we need periods. We're not really writing sentences here. It's just a text label, but this is the label that will appear for that control. It would just appear automatically with the control. It automatically works as a label. There's no other configuration that you have to do. The control also has its own default size, which you generally don't have to worry about unless you think somebody's going to write a novel in the contents. And so you want to make it 20 rows high. I suppose you could do that. But for the most part, people don't leave that extensive a set of comments. So we're going to go ahead and leave our rows and columns alone. Although in general, what rows and columns do is set the size of the control. I think in most cases, the default size is just fine. Well, we do want to be sure that our control appears the way it is supposed to appear, and that if we do leave comments, those comments work the way that we expect them to work. So we're going to have to submit a new instance of the form. So we're going to hit save and run form, and we're just going to go through the process again. And this time we're going to test to be sure that our signature comments control works. We're good there. Well, I guess I should probably add something here. So I'll just add some text there. I'll hit submit. Our form should reload. I should see my request info and other info with the appropriate data. And there we go. Add any comment you'd like to add. Disapproval requires a comment. Now, this is not true yet, but it will be true in just a little bit. Certainly, it should be true by the end of the day, but we have to determine that on the process timeline. So we'll handle that there. Okay, fine. Add any comment you would like. Now, here's a cool thing about this control is I can make it bigger or smaller. So if I want to write a novel myself, I can adjust the size of that control. So let's add our comment. And we're not going to be able to tell if this works yet. So we're going to have to complete our activity and reopen the instance to check to see, to ensure that our comment actually gets added where it is supposed to be added. So we're going to go ahead and hit complete there. Then we're going to go ahead and save and close the form just for general purposes. And we'll hit OK. And then we'll go to form instances. And again, I've chosen the email template. Don't know why I continue to do that, but there is my new form instance. And hey, this is a comment. That's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Notice now that my form is completed, there's no signature comments control. I don't have a task assigned to me. I don't see it. So this approval information section is completely empty, but everything else is fine. I can see who participated, who submitted, what their comments were. So I know this portion of the form is working exactly the way that I expected it to work. So with that, we now have a basic and working form, and we can leave the form now, and we can begin working on the process timeline. Based on what we've done so far, I have a working form. What I don't have is a working process, so I'm going to need to build that out. Now, one of the reasons why that I use an application stub that already has all the basic stuff in the form and all the basic stuff in the process timeline already configured is because I don't want to do all the stuff I just did on the form every time I create a form. I mean, taking the time from last week and this week, we're now 3 hours into doing things on a form. Admittedly, a lot of that is me explaining stuff, and that takes up a lot of time, but time is valuable, and you would have spent, some irreducible amount of time on the form. And as we go to the process timeline, you have to spend the same amount of irreducible time here. So there's a couple of things that we need to do. In fact, there's one thing we need to do before we do anything else, and that is we have to set our request number on the form. I probably should have reviewed this really quickly, but this seems like a good time to review it as well. I have this request number field on the form. Its default value, as we saw earlier when we were creating our test form instances, is unsubmitted. Now, this request number is going to be the unique value by which we identify this request. So I need to come up with the unique value in some way. As I've explained in previous ones, we're going to use a sequence number to do this. And there's a lot of stuff we can do with sequence numbers, and we can make them fairly complex. But the reason why I am starting this off as unsubmitted is because every time you call a sequence number, it creates the new sequence number. It burns that number. If I was to open this form and have the sequence number created on the form when the form is created, or I set it as the default value for this form field, that means if I were to open this form and then decide, you know what, I don't really want to submit this, I don't have time, I want to go eat lunch, whatever, I'll come back and do it later, and I close the form. That's fine, no harm, no foul, except that I've burnt that sequence number. It will never be repeated. So that means if this was the very first time anybody ever tried to submit a form, they opened it up, the request number was 1, they said, yeah, I don't want to deal with this right now, I'll do it later, and they close the form, then the next person who opens it up will get request number 2. And if they don't submit, request number 3. I mean, request number 10 might be the very first request that ever gets submitted. That's not optional. So what we want to do is ensure that before we assign a request number, we actually have a running process that requires a request number. So that is why the very first thing that I do is I create an activity to do that. Again, I don't necessarily have to. Technically, I can just set the form data here. So one of my options is to just go for task start on my very first activity and add a set form data action. And I can set request number. And now it asks me what I want to set it to. I'm just going to set it to a sequence number. And so we'll go to value and string. And there's a whole bunch of different ways that I can format sequence numbers. You've seen me do it before. I'm going to just do something very simple. I'm just going to set a regular auto numbered sequence number that will start at 1 and run through n. So I'm just going to use the sequence number system variable. But I don't want it to be a generic sequence number. I do want it to be specific to this process. So we'll call it seqnum new app. And the sequence number is the system variable. So that's going to generate a sequence number. And I've typed in a colon and then the word new app. New app creates a category. I don't believe I have a new app category on this system. Won't guarantee that. I might have done it in the past, in which case my sequence number will not start at 1, and I'll have to come back and fiddle with this again. Let's just call it, let's be sure that it is, we'll call this 2026-08-13. That will now be my category for this sequence number. I'm pretty sure that I don't have that as a sequence number category. So I think we're going to be fine. And this should start a sequence number of 1. And then we go. I have a sequence number when I get a new activity started. It is going to be sequence number 1. That will change the request number field on my form. That will in turn add the request number, the sequence number, to the instance, the title, or the form instance title, to customize it so that I'll have something unique to search by whenever I look for it in a knowledge view. So I can do it this way, and this is fine. That's going to work, and I never have to worry about it again. Every time every time activity 1 starts, this is just going to run. And great, we're happy with that. The thing is, and the thing I don't like, and by the way, if you decide to do it this way, that's perfectly fine. There's no problem with it. It works. But it offends me on a maintenance level, because if I get hit by a bus, the next person who comes along is going to need to have to figure that, oh, there's a set form data in there. Now, there is, by the way, a clue that that set form data exists, because now that I have created that set form data action, if I go over here to this activity, it has a set form data tab now. That tab did not exist before, but now that I have a set form data action associated with this activity to begin on task start, okay, great. I now have a set form data tab, so I can see it that way, but still and all, it's not super obvious that that's what we're doing. Now, if you want to configure it this way and you're happy with that, and especially if it's a practice that you always do and you want to document it that way, that's perfectly fine. I wouldn't argue with you. I don't do it. And the reason I don't do it is because I want to explicitly have that set form data happen as an activity. It adds the tiniest, least consequential amount of overhead to do it my way, but I think it's worth it because it makes it explicit in your process timeline what's happening. In fact, it makes it an activity, and that is the first activity that we are going to have here. We are going to take this activity 1, and we're going to change its name first thing. You always want to change the name of your activities. If you just create them in Process Director, it will give them the default names of activity 1, activity 2, activity 3, and so forth, which are unique and yet still uniquely unhelpful. So we're just going to call this activity set request number. We're going to change it to a custom task activity, which will pop up our custom task tab. And so I'm going to go and I'm going to select the form data mapping and set form data custom task. I'm going to add that custom task. It wants to know what my container form is. That will, of course, be my building apps form. So I am going to set that. And once I have set it, I will now hit configure. And it will eventually show me my configuration. I don't need my data source form here. So I'm not really pulling anything from a different form. I am setting the value on this form, so I can skip that. All I really have to do is choose my request number field, and I can just set that data to, I did not copy the system variable. I thought I hit Control C. Clearly, I missed doing that. So we'll just retype. Oh, wow. We're retyping all sorts of bad things. SEQ underscore NUM colon 2026 0813. And I will hit OK and close. I am done. So the very first thing that will happen when my process starts is the set request number. And if I put my mouse over the little icon that appears, it will show me that it is a set form data custom task. I'm super happy with this, the way it's worked out so far. I'm going to go ahead and hit update. Now I can begin adding my actual activities. So we're going to go ahead and create activity 2. We're going to make this a parent activity. Now, the first thing we are going to do, of course, is make this object dependent on our set request number activity. And that way our set request number activity will happen first, and then activity 2 will happen second. We want to do it that way. We don't want them to run in parallel because we want to ensure that our request number is set before we actually move into the activity itself and we open the form, because we're going to be setting the name of the form essentially by setting the request number field. So I want to be sure that that all has time to take and get reflected properly in the form before I get to any user activity. And activity 2, by the way, is not going to be a user activity either. It is going to be a loop. I'm going to create this as a parent activity, and I'm going to create an approval loop inside my process. And so all of my approvals will happen inside the loop. That is the best practice. And the reason that it is the best practice is because it enables me to exit the loop very easily if my request is denied. It also enables me to very easily return the request to the submitter if they need to resubmit it. It's pretty darn useful. So it should be the default, the go-to method of creating approvals, because it just makes doing them a lot easier. So we're going to open up activity 2, and we're going to call this the approval loop. We are going to set the activity type to parent if I can find it, because apparently I don't know the alphabet. And we could provide a description here. I think there is an argument that we should provide a description here. In fact, for every activity, we should provide a description of what that activity does. In the interests of time, I am not going to provide a description. I will tell you that you should, because again, if you get hit by a bus, your replacement needs to be able to come and see what these different activities do. The description never displays to the end user. It's not for that purpose. It's really for your fellow implementers to understand what it is you've done if you're not around to let them know anymore. So you should always fill out the description. I probably should have talked about that on the other activity, but it just caught my eye now, so it needs a description. Now we go into the looping tab. We're not going to get into the details of how the looping tab works. We're just going to talk about what you should do on your loop. At the very least, you need to cancel the remainder of the loop when a condition is met. This is going to lock you into some design choices. For example, it is going to lock me in to a design choice of having a result named deny on all of the user activities that occur inside this loop. So I'm going to create the loop, then I'm going to create 1 or 2 approval activities. However many I create, this property is going to require, once it's fully configured, that I have a deny result. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the condition under which the rest of the loop is canceled. And that is going to be whenever a request is denied. So we're going to click to create condition. And we're going to add the condition on timeline, and we're going to go to any child activity result. So we're at the parent level of the loop. All of the approval activities will take place inside this loop as child activities of the approval loop, parent activity. So what I want to do is to evaluate all of the child activity results. And if any of them I'm not sure why my equal sign is not showing there. I have some weird little display thing happening. But equal does appear to be what has been checked there. And so I'm going to put the word deny. All right, so I've locked myself into having to have a deny result to escape my loop. So that means that all of my approval activities, one of the results is going to have to be deny. I just want you to notice that I did use the equal operator here, so it must match deny exactly. And that's fine because I'm going to create that deny result. And so it will match exactly. But keep that in mind because we're going to do something different here in a second. So I'm going to hit OK. So my child activity result equals deny. The loop gets canceled. And no matter where I am in the loop, you can have 30 steps and I might be on step 1, but if I hit deny, the other 29 steps don't happen. I exit the loop immediately. And that's fine. That's exactly what I want to do. Now, one of the little wrinkles about parent activities is that parent activities don't have an independent value. Their value is the value of the last completed child activity. That automatically gets transferred up to the parent as the value of the parent activity. I want you to keep that in mind because that will either rather later today or next week, we'll have to come back to that and that will make some sense. This is the minimum configuration that I'm going to need for an approval loop that I create. You do have to ask yourself the question, hey, wait a second. What if I want the initiator, the person who submitted it, what if I want to send it back to them because they've got something wrong or I need clarification or they need to answer some question, whatever it may be. What do I do then? Well, that's where jump back to the loop or jump back to the top of the loop when condition is met comes in. If you're not going to worry about resubmittal, you're either going to approve or deny. There's no other information the user can give you that will be helpful. They've added, assuming that you have appropriately configured your request info section, they've provided all of the info that they need to provide to you to make a decision as an approver. Then you don't need to do this. All you need to worry about is canceling the remainder of the loop. And we'll explain why that's important in a minute when we can see it a little bit clearer. So keep that in mind. There's still more to come about this. But for now, if we need to jump back to the top of the loop when the condition is met, if you want to do that, and we are going to do that here simply because it gives us something extra to test, and it gives us sort of the full stack of what you need for a base application, we once again have to create a condition, which once again is going to lock us into a result on all of our child activities. We already need one called deny. If we do this, we're going to need a second one. So in this case, we're going to add a condition where any child result or any child activity result, and this time we're going to use contains. So any child activity result contains, and I'm going to use some more generic wording here. I may call it, I may call the actual activity something different, but I want to be sure that it goes back to the submitter. So I'm going to use contains so that I can find some minimal text that I need to see on the result before I know that it needs to go back to the submitter. So I'm just going to resume it. No, resubmit. So I'm going to need resubmit as part of the verbiage of my result. The result could be initiator resubmittal. Ask for, well, I don't want to put too much text into it could just be resubmit. It could be initiator resubmittal. It could be ask submitter to resubmit. That's a pretty long button. I'm not sure I'd want that language in a button, but this gives me some wiggle room by having a contains operator. Now, it's not right or wrong to use equal or contains. It's up to you. Contains gives me a little wiggle room. Ask to resubmit, initiator resubmittal, simply resubmit. All of those work as activity results. So while this gives me wiggle room using contains, this result doesn't give me any wiggle room. I used the equal operator, and it's going to look for deny, and that deny is going to have to be an exact match. There is no wiggle room there. Which of these two operators you use is up to you. I guess it depends on how much freedom you want to give yourself and how loosey-goosey you want to get on your result buttons. I would recommend not being loosey-goosey on the result buttons. I would recommend that all of your result buttons be consistent throughout the entire approval process. And in general, you should be very consistent in your use of buttons and in the use of colors and all other things, as we'll discuss here in a second. But you have an option. Both contains and equals work. Just remember that equals requires an exact match. Contains gives you a little bit of wiggle room. That's all we need to configure here, since we are going to add the ability to jump back to the top of the activity or the top of the loop. So we're just going to hit close there. And just on general purposes, I'm going to hit update. Now we have to begin configuring the approval loop. I need to add child activities to it. So I am going to click on approval loop and hit create child activity. In fact, I'm going to do that a couple of times. So I've got 3 activities. I've got activity 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3. I am going to, these are going to be user activities. They're all going to be stuff that users have to do. So I'm going to make them all dependent on each other so that they run in sequence. And as I do, when I set this dependency here, notice that my approval loop automatically got larger, and it will get even larger if I make activity 2.3 dependent on activity 2.2. Here's how parent activities work. When a parent activity is invoked, the very first child activity is automatically started. When the last child activity completes, the parent activity automatically completes. So I don't need to make activity 2.1 dependent on activity 1. In fact, I don't have to make activity 2.1 dependent on anything. It is in its own world. It has a successor activity, activity 2.2, but it does not need to be prompted to start, because in my process timeline, once set request number is finished, it kicks off the approval loop activity. Starting the approval loop activity automatically starts activity 2.1. We then go through our activities. When activity 2.3 is completed by the user, the approval loop activity will automatically be done. Now, in our case, what we have done is we have set up a system to resubmit the approvals. And if I'm going to do resubmission, that means the very first activity that needs to take place in my approval loop is the initiator resubmittal. I wouldn't have to put this in if we didn't have the resubmit result. It would never go back to the submitter, so we would never have to configure this. But since we have configured it where it is possible to ask for the initiator to resubmit, I have to configure this activity appropriately. So we are going to change this to initiator resubmittal. It is a user activity. We're good there. We're going to need to give instructions to our user. This is our very first user activity. It's the very first activity with instructions now. So an approver has requested that you resubmit this request. I'm just going to leave it really generic like that. We're interested in seeing the instructions. The instructions always need to be, excuse me, the instructions always need to be relevant to whatever the user is supposed to do in that activity. So we're just letting them know that an approver has requested that you resubmit this request. I might want to give further instructions, refer to their comments for changes. You should have received an email that told you what needs to be changed. I might specify that verbiage here. I'm not going to do it in this case, but we are going to ensure that we do have instructions, and theoretically, we're going to ensure that we have a description here. In this case, I want the initiator resubmittal to be assigned to timeline initiator. So I am not going to change that. I am going to change the results. I am going to add a result, because right now there is no result assigned. And if no result is assigned, then Process Director will automatically create a ugly gray complete button that when you click will complete your task. I'm going to give my approver two options. The first activity result, I'm going to call resubmit. And again, give a description of what resubmit means, although I think in our case, to us at least, it's obvious. The button order on form. I do want this to be the very first button on the form. As we've talked about before, here at BP Logix, we number our button order from the most positive result to the least positive result. So I always want my approve or whatever my good result is, I always want that to be the very first button. Reading from left to right, I want that to be the very first button on the left. In this case, I have two results, so my good result needs to be the first button, and my bad result needs to be the second button. So we're going to set this to button order on form. Now we're going to talk about what we're going to put on these buttons. It will automatically have the text resubmit, but by default, this button is also going to be gray and ugly. And we generally don't want to give gray and ugly buttons to our end users. We want to give them more interesting buttons. Plus, we also want to ensure that we meet the accessibility requirements and contrast for any color that we use. So for my resubmit button, I am going to set an icon, and I'm going to make a white icon here. So we're going to set our color to white. And I am just going to give it the, I'm going to give it the plus button here. And that will be the plus icon. Can't see it because the icon is white, but we are going to set our button background color to some flavor of green. And it is going to be a relatively dark green because we do want to ensure that we maintain the appropriate color contrast between the background and our foreground text. So my back color is going to be this kind of medium dark green, and my button text color is going to be white. Cool. And I don't have to worry about conditions there. We'll just close that up. We'll go to our next activity result. Now, I am going to give my submitter the chance to get out of this submission. They've been asked to resubmit it. Maybe they decide it's too much trouble. I am going to give them a deny result. I'm going to give the initiator the ability to deny their own request and escape out of the approval loop. And that's going to make a couple of options here, or one option here, very important. I'm obviously going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to set my button order on form S2. My button icon, once again, I'm going to choose a white icon. And this time I am just going to use the icon with the X in it. And I am going to set my button background color to sort of a medium dark red. Maybe that's a little too red. There we go. That's dark red without being too dark. And of course, we're going to set our foreground color to white. So what I'm going to end up with is a green button for resubmit. I can't call this result name resubmit. And the reason I can't call this result name resubmit is because I will restart the loop if any child activity result contains the word resubmit. So I can't use resubmit as my result name because I will just keep I will just keep restarting my own timeline activity, which I don't want to do. So I can't call this resubmit. So I will just call this, you know what? I'll just call it submit. 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 It does not contain the re, so therefore it won't match. I can just submit my re-request, or you know what I can even call it? Just to get it completely out of the possibility, I can call it update. So there we go. We'll have a result name of update and a result name of deny. One green, one blue. They're in the proper order. But let's go back and look at this deny result. Remember, I'm going to have a task assigned to me. And now I'm going to deny my own result. As a general practice, and I'm going to implement it here, although admittedly, if it is the user himself denying his own request, I'm not sure he deserves to give himself an explanation, or if he requires an explanation from himself. But I am going to set signature comments required. Unlike other form controls, where I set their required options on the control itself inside the field properties for the control. That's not how signature comments fields work. Remember, they're not form fields. They look like form fields and they walk like form fields, but they don't quack like form fields or ducks. That's if it looks and walks like a duck. Okay, clearly I'm not good at analogies. However, and that's also not an analogy. So I guess I'm not good at English, and me not know things how work. In any event, this is where I control whether my signature comments field is required or not. It happens in the activity itself. Now, remember that signature comments control is going to display when the form opens. It doesn't know whether I am going to deny the result or whether I am going to update the result. So if I choose update, I will not have to leave a comment. However, it will not allow me to choose deny until I have added a comment. In fact, if I try to use deny without adding a comment, it will simply cause a validation error, and it will tell me you have to supply a signature comment before you can, deny your own result. So in most cases, the recommendation from BP-Logix is your signature controls should be required for the negative results. Generally, you don't have to justify why you approved a request, but you should justify why you're disapproving a request. So disapprovals generally require some form of signature comments. And so this is the paradigm that BP-Logix recommends for how user activities should be configured. Even though this is done by the actual initiator himself, and he probably doesn't need to send himself a comment about why he hates his own request, we're still going to require it here because this is sort of the best practice. And anybody else coming in later who is rereading through the process or looking at it in a knowledge view, hey, maybe it would be useful for them to know that the user submitted a request and then reconsidered and denied his own request and provided a reason why they did it. Might not be helpful to do this for the submitter, but it certainly might be helpful for others. Now, we're not done yet because here's our problem. If we just close out and begin working on our next activity, that means that the very first time my approval loop starts, this activity is going to run. And that I do not want to happen. So I am going to have to limit that by pulling the needed when condition on here and determining when this activity is required to run, or when I have a necessity to run it. I obviously don't need to run it every time it runs. I only need to run it if I have restarted the activity. So I've got a couple of different options for setting that up. Parent activity iterated. Well, I certainly only want it to run when the parent activity has iterated. It has to have iterated at least once. So I don't want it to fall into this activity on the very first time I run it. I also don't want it to happen unless one of the child results has been deny. So we can add an add condition. I think that's probably sufficient what I have there, but I can also add, and this also works as well. It probably would work without the iterator. So we have lots of options for how we want to control this. In this case, we'll look for timeline activity, and we'll look for an activity result on the approval loop as, well, we have equal, and we'll set that to deny. Okay, so parent activity iterated and activity result of approval loop is deny. We could probably have any child activity result is deny. No, we couldn't because we're not in a parent activity. But what I'm doing here is I'm trying to ensure that this activity is not going to run, is not needed, and will be skipped unless I've actually hit deny and it's gone back to the initial activity. This obviously is something we're going to have to test. My remaining activities are going to be a little bit easier to configure because I'm going to want them to run all the time, no matter what happens. And so therefore, we're just going to call this supervisor approval. And it is a user activity. I need to provide appropriate instructions. You're this person's supervisor, you deal with it. And we will have to set some sort of time limit on this. We did not do this on the other one. I completely forgot. We do need to set some duration. So let's give the supervisor 3 days to look this thing over and approve it. Our participants will be whoever the supervisor is. For ease of use, I'm going to leave timeline initiator as the initiator, so it just automatically gets assigned to me and we can run right through it easily for webinar purposes. Obviously, on your server, if you're doing this for real, you would need to assign an actual initiator to this activity. We will set the results. Once again, we'll have 2 results. We'll have approve and deny. We have 3 results. We got to add a 3rd result. So our first result is going to be approve. This is our positive result. So we're going to set this as order number 1. And then we will quickly go back in and set the color and the icon, which I guess we'll use the check icon here. And once again, we'll give it a nice green color and we'll set the 4 color to white. Don't need signature comments. Pretty happy with this as is. Now I've got a middle result. And we'll call this the initiator resubmittal result, which is the one that will send it back to the timeline initiator. And this is a middling result. I'm not approving it, but on the other hand, I'm not denying it. So this will be option number 2 as a middle way. And we will have to, once again, configure the button appropriately. And I'm going to use the little info icon for this one. And I'm going to set the color here. So for this, I will just pick some sort of blue color. I guess that's okay. And I will set the text color as white. And again, this is an iffy one. I think I may need signature comments here. If I'm going to resubmit it to you, maybe I need to tell you why I'm asking you for a resubmittal. Yes, I think I do. So I'm going to set signature comments required here. And then my final activity result is going to be deny, and that will be item 3. Notice that we are doing a lot of repetitive stuff here. Repetitive stuff that would largely be ameliorated if we just went ahead and used a template that already had all of these things built into it. Where is my red? What have I done now to get red? There we go. We'll get a nice red color there. Because I have to do all of these things over and over and over again. I don't need to worry about the start when or completed when or needed when. I think I'm fine here. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and hit update to update my timeline so that all of my options have been saved. So let me tell you on something that we're working on that will make life a little easier. I'm going to have to go back in and I'm going to have to redo activity 2.3. One of the things that we are working on, and I'm not sure whether it will show up here on the actions link or whether it will show up here on the menu, but we are going to make it possible for you to copy and paste timeline activities, which I think is going to be big, big help. Sadly, doesn't exist yet, so we are going to have to recreate all of this from scratch all over again on the manager approval activity. So once again, we're going to go into the results and add our 3 results. Prove 1. See, this is the tedious part, that creating a template takes care of for you because all of the tedious stuff is already been done. I mean, we're not going to completely get rid of the tedium, I don't think, but we're going to make it somewhat less tedious if everything that you've got is done inside a template, and all of these standard activities have been pre-configured for you, and you don't have to do them yourself. It's a big help because, as you can see, doing it this way just requires a lot of extra work. Again, this is our middle way. Once again, go white here. We're going to use our info icon. I believe I used a blue background last time, so we'll do the same here. Now, you might find it helpful to just have some set colors that you use all the time so that you can just put in the hexadecimal color there rather than using the color picker. You might find that that's a little easier to use. We'll have our signature comments required, and then finally our deny 3, our white X icon, and some form of redness, and white text, signature comments required, and then we're going to hit close. All right, I've got an approval loop, and that's as much of an approval loop as I'm going to implement here. Oh, I suppose I should have gone back here and given the manager 3 business days to complete the activity as well. So we'll hit update here, and now I've got an approval loop. I am going to need one more thing. So I am going to need to create one more activity just to make this thing work the way that I want it to work as a basic activity. I'm going to need activity 3. And I'm going to call activity 3 final disposition. And I'm actually going to change the type to a notify activity. I'm just going to send a notification. So what do I make final disposition a successor activity for? Do I link it to the manager approval? Well, the answer is no, I do not. In general, these activities inside the approval loop should only be dependent on each other. Activities outside of the approval loop should be dependent on the parent activity. So in this case, what I would do when I want to make this object dependent, I'm going to drag it up here to my approval loop. And therefore, when the approval loop ends, which remember, happens automatically after manager approval completes. So when approval loop ends, it will automatically go to my final disposition notification, which is going to send the final email to our initiator to let them know that their request was either approved or denied. So when I have a parent loop, or when I have a loop, a parent approval loop, in general, we want to use that parent approval loop to be dependent on predecessor activities, and we want it to be the successor activities of any outside non-loop activities that might follow it. So we now have a complete timeline, which I am going to update one more time, and which, of course, we are now going to need to test. So now our testing is going to get a little bit tedious because we're going to have to be able to test multiple scenarios about what might happen when we submit this. And this is why we're limiting quite severely the number of activities inside our approval loop. So let's think about what we need to test here. We need to be able to test whether the initiator resubmittal is skipped whenever I first run my process timeline, and it is my first run through the loop. We've got to be able to test whether approvals get me all the way to my final disposition notification. We need to test if at any point I hit deny for any one of these 3 activities, whether it automatically moves me to my final disposition notification. If either of these 2 activities hit resubmit, I've got to check to be sure that it takes me back to initiator resubmittal. And finally, if I hit deny or resubmit anywhere in this process, I have to ensure that the signature comments control requires that I place a signature comment into it. Oh, and we're also testing to see whether it sets my request number before it does anything else. So a lot of things to test here. So we're going to go ahead and close our timeline activity. Now, we haven't even talked about the email template. We're clearly not going to talk about that until next week. But we are going to go ahead and do our testing here. And we have about 20 minutes left. So I think running through a couple of test scenarios is the last thing that we're going to have time to do today. So we're going to go ahead and run our form. So we're going to fill out some request info, some other info. We're going to submit. First thing I'm looking for is whether I am in request number 1. I am in request number 1. Great success. And I did not add manager approval instructions. I skipped right past it, but I did add supervisor approval instructions. and I am in the supervisor approval activity, that means that I skipped the timeline initiator resubmittal. Well, good for me. That worked. Here's my instructions. You're this person's supervisor. You deal with it. Okay, great. So let's go through and see if my process fully works. I'm not going to add any comments. If I hit approve, it should submit without requiring comments. It did. Approve is my result. I am now in Nager approval, or and I have no instructions. So I've obviously got to go in and change that to manager, and I need to add instructions. So I'll make that change. But if I hit approve here, that should take me to my notification, which I don't even have any notifications set up, so nothing will happen. So let's go to completed timelines. I have, I didn't even check my instance names. Building apps timeline containing request number 1 by Dale Franks on 8/13/2026. Cool. My form instance, request number 1 by Dale Franks on 8/31/2026. All of that worked. If I open up my instance, I can see all of my activities and stuff. That is all nice. So I know I can run through the process once, and that is the happy path. I know that if I submit a request, it will skip the initiator resubmittal. My supervisor or manager will approve, and then it will go to my my notification activity, which we'll talk about next week. I did learn that I have some configuration changes I need to make. So we'll change this to manager, and we will take the instructions and say, the supervisor dumped this on you. So now it's your problem. So we now have properly named activity, or properly spelled activity, and we now have instructions. So we're good there. So now we can just hit OK and save and close. And now we're going to do some more retesting. So we'll open our building apps form again. And again, we'll throw in some data. We'll hit submit, and there we go. I'm in supervisor approval, and now I've got to worry about denial and initiator resubmittal. What happens if I click the buttons? Okay, approver comments. You must enter a comment to complete this task. Well, what if I deny it? Nope. Oh, it got out of the activity. So let's go back to our building apps timeline and see if I configured that correctly. Let's go back to the results. Let's go back to my deny result. I did not click signature comments required. So let's be sure that we do that for the deny result. And I did have it checked for initiator resubmittal, but I forgot to do it for deny. So I picked up that error. Let's go back over here to manager approval and just be sure that we have properly done these signature comments required for deny. Good. Signature comments required for initiator resubmittal. Good. And no signature comments required here. Great. So we found a problem again, and we fixed that problem. So here we go. Turn number 3 in our testing. Now, this is super tedious. I imagine it's tedious to watch. It's tedious for me to do. And yet, if you don't do it, you have no way of ensuring that things don't go horrifically wrong whenever your application gets into production. You have to test all of these different scenarios, as tedious and inconvenient as it may be. So we now know initiate a resubmittal doesn't work. Deny should now not work. It does not work. So we know we're good with that. So now we can add our comments. This is all wrong. Do it again. And we're going to hit initiator resubmittal. Now, last time when we hit deny, it completely escaped and closed the form. So we know it canceled the remainder of the process, or we know it canceled the remainder of the loop. So let's see when I click initiator resubmittal, if it actually goes to initiator resubmittal. Fingers crossed. And it went to manager approval. The supervisor dumped this on you, so now it's your problem. What if I hit initiator resubmittal here? It now went to supervisor approval. And if I hit initiator resubmittal here, it went to manager approval. Okay. I have a problem here that I need to fix. And the problem, I suspect, and we'll just go ahead and deny and get out of here. Okay. Deny. Now we're done. Okay. I suspect my problem is right here with initiator resubmittal and my needed win, because I have both. So let's change this to last child activity result. Oh, deny. That's my problem right there. That's not what I'm looking for. I am not looking to do a resubmittal if it was denied. We'll just say contains resubmit. So it's my needed when condition that is messed up. It was looking for deny instead of resubmit. And we're just going to use last child activity result. So basically what that means is if the previous child activity result that just ran was deny, then I want you to run this here. And now we'll hit OK and close and OK again. And here we go with test round number 4. There we go. We're going to add some comments and we're going to hit initiator resubmittal. And we're in manager approval. So we're going to hit deny. So what is my condition? Let's do this. Let's actually go back in to my sort of completed version of this and see exactly what conditions I did use to make the, oh, I did not set it there. All right, where did I set it? I've done something wrong here. I thought I could fix it real quick from there. We'll go back to initiator resubmittal. Let's just get rid of that. Let's just go to parent activity iterated equals yes. If the following condition is true, this activity will be initiated. And let's run through round 4. Now, if this round 4 doesn't work, I am not going to sit here with only 10 minutes left and kind of troubleshoot it in front of you. I'll just fix it for next week, and we'll just pick it up from here next week. Because I know I have the perfect condition set, and I thought I knew what it was. But now I don't remember where I've put it, and I'm not going to waste your time looking through the content list to find it. And we're back at manager approval. I'm not sure why we're at manager approval, and I'm not sure why initiator resubmittal isn't happening. So we're just going to deny. Oh, now it's an initiator resubmittal. Hold on. Is it my result? We're going to check one more thing here. And if not, I will figure out what my supervisor approval results. Initiator resubmittal. So let's try initiator resubmittal. Close. And let's go to manager approval. And I did see that it worked. I did see that we were in the right activity. So result name, initiator resubmittal. Let me just paste that. Initiator resubmittal, close. All right. And for initiator resubmittal activity, user, okay, close. Okay. One more. Submit. And now that this says initiator resubmittal instead of resubmittal, I should be able to throw in a comment here, hit initiator resubmittal. And I am now in the initiator resubmittal activity. So you know what? It could be that my conditions on that activity, on this activity, were perfectly fine. The problem was that I was passing the wrong text that did not contain resubmit. So this worked. An approver has requested that you resubmit this request. Great. I'm going to go ahead and update it, which should take me back to supervisor. Oh, annotator resubmittal is my activity name, by the way. I am apparently the annotator of the activity. So now back in supervisor approval, fine, we'll approve that. And now we're in our manager approval. So we'll add some other stuff there. We'll hit initiator resubmittal. And I am back in initiator resubmittal. Happy, happy, happy. Okay. I should make some changes here. Remind me next week, we got to talk about this. If I'm going to resubmit it, I got to be able to edit this, and it is still disabled. I need to fix that if I'm going to do an initiator resubmittal. But for now, I am just going to hit update. Cool. We're now back in supervisor approval. We'll approve. Cool. And it will take us to manager approval. And before I hit approve, we will look and see what we did. Initiator, supervisor approval, annotator resubmittal, supervisor approval, manager approval, annotator resubmittal, supervisor approval, manager approval, and done with that activity. We are going to go here. And I don't think annotator is a word. So we're going to call this, we're going to add an I, and we'll call that initiator resubmittal. And that way I will be the initiator instead of the initiator. Well, great. We are happy with where we are so far. However, next week we will have to continue with more. We still need to figure out what we're going to do with this final disposition. To make that final disposition work, we're also going to have to go back into our Building Apps email template and work on that thing. But before we do any of that, we're going to have to go back to our form, and we got to figure out how to make initiator resubmittal work. So next week, we are going to kick off with doing the initiator resubmittal stuff, and then we're going to move to this final disposition activity and figure out what it is that we need to do to create an email template that is going to work for us. For today, though, we are out of time, so I will say goodbye. Have a great weekend. Have a great week next week. We'll see you next Thursday. So long.